Hi, JP. Let's hear it.
All right. So while Mike was freezing his butt off at Lambeau, I did the tier list this week. Do we want to start from the bottom or with the top?
Let's start at the bottom. Let's work up.
All right. So our first tier is see you in 2026. These are teams that, they're just waiting for the NFL draft. They're on mock draft simulators. They're sending their scouts out. These teams are the Saints, the Giants, the Titans, Raiders, Jets, Browns, and Dolphins.
I think you missed one here in your tier.
Oh no, I actually put one of them twice, so I have to.
Oh, gotcha. Sorry. Because I was gonna say, because you mentioned scouts, and I'm like, that team doesn't have any scouts. I don't.
See, we're gonna get to that team
there. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is unfortunately just the way of the NFL is that when it goes south, your season kind of ends very early, and that is why I have great job security now as a draft guy. Is these teams right here and these fan bases. So I thank you to these fan bases. But yeah, look forward to my draft board. It was last week, top 100. Go check it out if you're a fan of these teams.
All right, this next tier I made specifically for these two teams. The QB won't save you. That is the Commanders and the Bengals. With the rumors that Joe Burrow is coming back for the Bengals, I just have to let the Bengals fans know he's not going to save you this season. Like this team gives up 40 points a game every single game, and you're putting so much strain on a quarterback coming off of a bad toe injury. And I just don't know what the benefit is here of bringing him back potentially in a lost season where your defense is arguably the worst defense in the league. And just there's nothing here right now. And then the same goes for the Commanders. We talked about Brian Callahan giving up play calling duties. I think the inverse of that is whenever you have to take over play calling duties, that's always a sign of, hey, maybe things aren't going as great as we think they are. That's Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn taking the reins back over on that defense. But again, I don't know if Dan Quinn's defense is going to be the one to get the Commanders over the hump. So even when Jaden Daniels comes back, I don't think the quarterbacks are saving this team this year.
Yeah, honestly, for both, though, I get it because I don't think the jobs of either are secure right now. I'd even throw Dan Quinn in there with how bad the season's gone for them. And the fact that, again, it's his side of the ball that is the problem. And that's always kind of, at least in my eyes, I don't know how owners think or whatever, but at least in my eyes, that's always a big red flag is when it's like, hey, you were the OC, your offense is terrible. Then what are you bringing to the table? You're the DC, your defense is terrible. Then what are you bringing to the table? So I think both these teams fall into it. And that's the worry. If you're a fan, it's like, we're going to rush Joe Burrow back to save Zach Taylor's job. Like we don't want either of those, you don't want either of those things, unfortunately. So yeah, I do think these are apt. And the only silver lining, if there is one, is that the fact that Joe Burrow's come back so quickly means that it's hopefully not as major and probably not career threatening, because turf toe can be. And so if he's back this early, probably a good sign, at least for him and his recovery, but not a great sign for the fact that he's going to take a zillion more hits if he comes back.
All right. This next tier, soul searching time. It's time to dig deep, figure out what the team is going to be moving forward. This is the Falcons, the Cardinals, the Panthers, and the Vikings.
I love the name of this tier because it feels that it's one of my favorite parts about doing the tiers is just coming up with the names of the tier. And this one feels so perfectly on the nose with all four of these teams, because it's not only it's one, the quarterback position, where all four of these teams, it's like, hey, this is not going like we planned. Whether it's Michael Penix Jr., J.J. McCarthy, Kyler Murray, Bryce Young, you had high expectations. They were all drafted in the top 10. None of them are playing like franchise quarterbacks right now, unfortunately. Some aren't even playing. But none of them are playing that way. And we got to figure out what is going to work going forward. Is it OC related? Is it talent related? Where do we need to improve this roster? It's clear though for all these teams that I don't think this year is their year. I'd be surprised if any of these teams sneak back into contending for the playoffs whatsoever here.
And with JJ McCarthy and the Vikings, because that's JJ McCarthy and Michael Penix Jr. is sort of the reason why I made this tier. I made it specifically for them. With the Vikings, it's so fascinating how they built this team because, like we said in the preseason, this team was going to have to be carried by their veterans. But their veterans on defense are a little bit older, a little bit longer in the tooth. Their offensive line has been healthy. But even when everything has been working, JJ McCarthy, outside of the scripted drives, has been a roller coaster this season with a lot more downs than ups. So I'm just I'm concerned, but I'm also still trying not to be out on McCarthy so early because this is what his 7th game as a starter, or like he's like maybe his 4th game as a starter.
I think this is going to be his 5th. So he is so early.
5 games. It's very early in the career, but things are not looking great, especially because this team was a playoff team last season.
Yeah, and it hurts even more when Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold look the way they do, right? And they would not be playing the same way in Minnesota. It's hard. It's easy to point the finger at one quarterback who's struggling and say it's on him, but the offensive line and the injuries that they've had up front, it was never going to be a clean year with how banged up they've been up front and how many times they've had to play Justin School, right? So like it was never going to look great, but that being said, it's still very worrisome what it does look like right now.
So this next tier is outside looking in. And this is the 49ers, Texans, and Cowboys. These are teams that are right on the fringe of playoff potential. I think if things break the right way, they can make the playoffs. But I do think for each of these teams, there are certain things that sort of holds them back from me saying, like, yeah, this team that's a playoff team. They're going to make it.
What do we think about Davis Mills actually looking good in the Texans offense last week? And now, like, good's relative, but the bar was very low with CJ Stroud. And I don't know if he's had many games this year as good as what we just saw from Davis Mills. I'm not saying there's like a quarterback controversy whatsoever, but I think a lot of people, given how CJ Stroud's career started, have made excuses for him for a very long time since then, given the state of the offensive line. But like, at what point can we say, if a guy like Davis Mills can come in and at least match his level of play in a game like that, and probably against the Broncos too? I mean, he wasn't a disaster in that game either when he came in. He led some scoring drives. Are we worried about CJ Stroud's franchise-ness, shall we say?
I don't know if I'm worried about the franchise-ness or franchise.
Sorry that I made you repeat
of CJ Stroud. I think it's more just Nick Caley had an incredible play calling day against the Jaguars. I think they had plans for everything the Jaguars would do. They had plans for everything that the Jaguars threw at them defensively. And when you have that capability, it's easy to hit your back foot and just get the ball out. I also think there's a part of that CJ Stroud is still working on. I think one of the things that he does a little that sort of like makes your eye twitch a little bit is he'll hold on to the ball looking for a big play. And you understand, because when that offense was so devoid of a run game, you had to get into 3rd and longs all the time. But the Texans ran for 6 yards a carry on Sunday. I feel like if they're able to continue that success on the ground and sort of take some pressure off of CJ Stroud, I think he'll look just as good or even better than Davis Mills. I just think everything went right for the Texans, and I think they finally found like part of an offensive line combination that I think will work for them and give them sort of an identity.
For the Texans, at least, if they are going to make the playoffs, they have their work cut out for them. And basically, they have all the teams that they're competing with for the wild card spot on their schedule still. They play the Bills. They play the Chiefs. They play the Chargers. Those are probably, and they played the Colts twice as well. So it's not easy going forward. It would be a long shot, but if they were to do it, they are one who can actually knock off the teams in front of them in that wild card race.
I don't know what the NFL scheduling was like for the AFC South this season, but the Jaguars and Texans both having the Colts twice at the end of the season, and then the Jaguars not playing the Titans until like the final 6 weeks of the season feels really funny.
Dude, the I'm gonna bring it up again, but the 2 games in 3 weeks thing and the overloading one part of your schedule, they should mandate 8 weeks between divisional games. 8 weeks. I don't want to see one team play twice in a month like that. That's just it. They just did this. We don't need like it. I'm gonna keep going on forever, but we just don't need it. We just don't need it.
All right, this next tier is peaking at the right time, and this is the Ravens and the Bears. I think both these teams have started to find their groove a little bit, and you can go, hey, I can see this team being a playoff team. For the Ravens, I mean, they're still the favorites to win the division. So both these teams are doing what this tier says, and they're peaking at the right time.
Ironically, both these teams negative point differential for the season so far, but Bears at 6-3, Ravens at 4-5, and the Ravens we've talked about, they have the Steelers twice still on their schedule, so a game back. But realistically, if they can handle the Steelers twice, they will be your AFC North champions. On the flip side, the Bears, the NFC a little more hotly contested for that final wild card spot. You have they're 6-3, Packers 5-3-1 now, Rams or Seahawks at 7-2, whoever falls off there. And then the 49ers at 6-4, only 3 of those 4 mentioned can make it. So you're going to either see the 49ers left home, the Bears left home, the Packers left home, or one of the Rams, Seahawks left home. I don't think if we're betting, I would not bet on the Bears right now, but their offense, like you mentioned, has improved. Their defense at least looks a little better with Austin Booker back in the fold. Maybe they can keep this going, the magic with Ben Johnson.
And I do think for the Bears, I have to say something about Caleb Williams and some of the, he misses checkdowns. He'll miss flat routes looking for big plays. That's because that's what the offense is built on. The offense is built around Caleb Williams' ability to extend and make those big plays. I think Ben Johnson is willing to trade off some of the efficiency of taking the check down. There was a play in that Giants game where he has Kyle Monangai open in the flat or as a check down, but he's hunting the touchdown, and he almost makes a great play to Olamide Zaccheaus in the back of the end zone. But that's where the Bears want to be. The Bears want to use Caleb Williams' ability to throw outside of structure and create those explosive plays as the fulcrum of their offense, which means they have to be more successful on the ground. It feels a lot like we're talking about the Packers and Jordan Love a little bit, with some of the explosiveness of the quarterback just saying like, hey, man, we're not going to ask you to throw a check down. We want you to lean into what you're doing best, which is part of why I think Theo Bernadette is starting instead of Braxton Jones, because he's a better run blocker. He is a guy that's going to help you create explosives and sustainability on the ground. So they're trading off the down-to-down success of the passing game and explosiveness in the run game for success in the run game and explosives in the passing game.
I think the 70% number that Ben Johnson floated out preseason, I think he's basically just scrapped that. He's like, hey, he saw preseason. He's like, he ain't hitting 70. There is no way. Let's just get some big ass plays in this offense. And I think they've done a great job of adjusting as we've talked about all throughout the past few weeks.
This next tier is called The Vibe is in Shambles. Things are not going great. And this is the Bills, Jaguars, and Steelers. All these teams can be playoff teams. In fact, I think the Bills are widely considered a contender in the NFL. But the vibe is just not going great right now. Things are falling apart. We're talking about if Sean McDermott's the right coach. We're talking about like if the Steelers need to fully reset, the Jaguars, maybe Liam Cohen doesn't like Trevor Lawrence. The vibe is just in shambles right now.
Technically, as you mentioned, these are all playoff teams. As if the season ended today, they would all be in the playoffs. But it doesn't feel like it, right? You hit the nail on the head where it's like, this is not, and it's funny how the NFL works when the record says one thing. We just talked about a Bears team of 6-3 and how they're having like a roller coaster awesome season. Bills are 6-3, and it's like, this could be the end. You know, it's like sky is falling here. Well, we are, and it's just the expectations. They thought this was a year they could take over the top of the AFC, and it looks like they are kind of an eroding statue of sorts. Like they are a once proud building that's gone into fallow. It's just that they are not the team that was neck and neck with the Chiefs for so long. Even though they're 6-3, even though they only have 3 losses, it just doesn't look like a team that is ready to win a Super Bowl, unfortunately. And for the Jaguars, it's like, hey, we're 5-4. This should be, reason for optimism. It's been so draft for so long, but you're 5-4, and Trevor Lawrence has actually not really improved that much. You thought new OC, new bevy of weapons. It's going to be, the best situation he's ever had. You're thinking Daniel Jones and Indy right now is what you were thinking with Trevor Lawrence heading into this season. And it just has not been like that whatsoever.
Yeah. And I think for the Jaguars, I think obviously there's a lot that goes into why Trevor Lawrence hasn't played the way that we thought he would going into the season. I think part of it is because they thought the offensive line would play a lot better. And it turns out when you don't spend a lot and you try and bargain bin the offensive line, some of that rears its ugly head. But I do think with Trevor Lawrence, there's going to be variance in his play. There's going to be some highs, there are going to be lows. But I think now it's just sort of the feel for the game. The feel for the game for Trevor Lawrence has to improve. The situational stuff has to improve a little bit. Because I think he was, for so long, he had to take the big play and make the big play. And now he's hunting the big play when you don't really have to. So I think that this offense feels maybe a year away, which makes like, hey, you're still in the playoff hunt. That's a good thing that you're still a year away from being legitimate. But it just there's just a lot of questions right now.
Yeah, I am right there with you. And then to touch on the Steelers just for a second, it just feels like this year you're not that good of a team, but then you also know that, hey, we're gonna have to do the quarterback thing again. Like you're dreading, like, hey, we're gonna have to do this quarterback thing again. We've had stopgap after stopgap. We're gonna have another offseason where it's just rinse repeat. It's kind of the same offseason. They're gonna win at least 9 games. They're going to be above 500. They may not make the playoffs, or if they do, they're going to lose in the first round. And then it's just going to be the exact same story, different offseason for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I think it feels uniquely tough this year because, like, yeah, you could say, like, we didn't think that this team was going to be, like, great, but getting walked down in the division by the Ravens. And again, this Steelers team has the Bears on the schedule. They had the Bills on the schedule, both Baltimore games and the Lions. Like this is a really tough stretch of games for them. So it just feels like seeing the imminent doom of what you have on your schedule compared to Baltimore, who outside of those 2 Pittsburgh games has New England and Green Bay as their toughest games, man, like that's just tough.
All right, next tier.
All right, this next tier is playoff teams. I think these teams are going to be tough outs when you get to November, or not November, when you get to January, when you get to playoff time. These are the Los Angeles Chargers. These are the Denver Broncos, the Indianapolis Colts, New England Patriots, Green Bay Packers, and Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Not putting the Colts in Super Bowl favorites, even after the Sauce Gardner trade. Explain yourself.
I like the Sauce Gardner trade for what it is. I just have a lot of questions about the last few weeks and Daniel Jones getting a lot of hits. He's taking a lot of hits, and it feels like their answers against pressure and some of the Daniel Jones stuff that he was doing against pressure in the beginning of the season is sort of wearing off. And that causes a little bit of concern because if Daniel Jones is going to crack under pressure, we've seen this story before. We saw it in New York, how Daniel Jones was a completely different quarterback under pressure. I think that some of their answers against pressure are starting to get holes poked in them. I think he was sacked 7 times against the Falcons. He was sacked 5 times against the Steelers. It just feels like some of the wear and tear is going to start building up for this team. And again, the Colts still have a really, really if this Daniel Jones thing is real, and if you are going to be real, Daniel Jones, after this bye week, Kansas City, both Jacksonville games, both Houston games, Seattle and San Francisco, it's time to go prove it.
Yeah.
I have my doubts about the Colts offense, but I can still say, if they just lean on Jonathan Taylor, that'll make them a playoff team.
Yeah, I was going to say, to play devil's advocate for a little, because I don't disagree with those points. I do think Daniel Jones under pressure, I'm worried about. But you can lean into Jonathan Taylor as they did last week and still score 30, right? You could still have him go off any given week and really not need Daniel Jones to win games. And then also, if you just look through the AFC landscape, there's a chance to get to a Super Bowl. All they would have to face is someone like Chargers, Chiefs, Patriots. That is 3 pass rushes that are not going to expose the Colts offensive line. You will not be getting a ton of pressure on Daniel Jones. So there is a world in where, yeah, I don't feel great about them if they face like a Texans defensive line, a Steelers defensive line, someone that can really bring it. But more of those teams I feel like are in the NFC than the AFC. There's not a lot of teams in the AFC playoff picture that really have a ton of juice along their front fours.
And that's what I sort of struggled with the AFC, where there are a lot of teams that are going to make the playoffs. Like, I think the Chargers, Broncos, and Patriots both all fall into, they are very good teams who will make the playoffs. But because they're in the AFC, they got a shot at going to the Super Bowl. But I don't know if I would call them a favorite. It's more just like, hey, once you get in, anything can happen. We've seen teams go on insane heaters when the playoffs start and make a Super Bowl run. So I think the difference in the NFC and AFC is, while I think there are more playoff caliber teams in the AFC, I think the Super Bowl favorites that we're going to get to, a lot of them are in the NFC.
Yeah, no disagreement. I think of the 5 best teams right now, at least 4 in the NFC, if not all 5. It looks lopsided at this point in time in terms of top end talent.
Yeah. So let's get into these Super Bowl favorites. They are the Lions, the Chiefs, the Eagles, the Seahawks, and welcome to the top tier, the Los Angeles Rams.
We're still rolling Eagles in this tier, even after.
I am, because, man, they feel like the Chiefs last year, where even though things look bad, they have all the aces. They have AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and Saquon Barkley, and that offensive line can still mow you down. They have one of the best defenses in the NFL, led by one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL, plus aces on that side of the ball. In a 1-game sample size of a playoff game, I don't know how any team is going to hold them down for 60 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, they are still the most talented team in the NFL. They just are. And not only just depth and talent across the entire roster, but then also top-end talent. AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, Jalen Carter, Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell. I mean, those are close to all pro caliber players at all of those positions. And those are like the positions you want to have all pro caliber players at. It helps to have that. Even if I just ragged on Saquon earlier in the show, he could still, I mean, there's any given game, he can still absolutely take you to town.
And that we've seen that this season for the Eagles.
Yep.
Like, AJ Brown has been tweeting about the Eagles offense since the beginning of the season, and there's still a game he's had this season where he's gone for like 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. Saquon Barkley's been up and down this season. There's a game that he's ran for 150. Devontae Smith has his games. Jalen Hurts has his games. The fact that you can just say, like, yeah, the offense hasn't looked great, but in any single game, you have to try and defend all of them. It just makes them really tough to beat.